I think he's going to be one of the greatest fighter ever. I think he's a better version than Khabib. I truly believe he is. He's not is now, but he can be.
You know, when you watch this guy train, you recognize how special a talent he is. And for a long time, people at Eagles MMA and at the American Kickboxing Academy understood that this is who Islam Makhachev is and will be for a long time. The problem was Khabib was the champion. And as you know, those guys would never have fought. But the moment Khabib retired, Islam started to make his way towards the championship opportunity. Many people for years have said, this guy is the uncrowned champion. Now he is no longer uncrowned. He's the undisputed lightweight champion of the world.
Born in the Dagestan capital of Makhachev, Makhachev's family eventually moved to the remote village of Burshi during his youth. Burshi has a population of just 211 people, judging from a 2010 census. And though he would later make his way back to the city, it was in this tiny part of the Dagestan Republic that Islam would spend his first years, attending school there before he would eventually find long-term success in sports as he grew older. Many fighters claim to come from humble backgrounds, but Islam Makhachev takes that to another level entirely.
Я родился в республике Дагестан, Махачкале. Вначале я очень много видов спорта поменял. Ходил на футбол, ходил на борьбу, на какие-то различные ударные виды спорта. Но это были какие-то отдельные виды спорта, где можно только бить, только бороться. Но потом как-то я попал на боевое самбо, и где можно совместить и ударную технику, и борьбу, и грэпплинг.
It takes some serious stones to pick a fight with the UFC champion. But back when Islam was just a kid, long before he had any form of training, he was subjected to bullying in his home of Burshi. The locals, who knew that he was born in the city of Makhachev, called him weak for having urban roots. In fact, it was his need to learn self-defense that actually drew him to pursue martial arts. First came his love for Sambo, a passion that he would bring with him right into his adulthood. In a way, it's almost a good thing that a few tough years sent Islam down a path that would forever change his life. But either way, we are guessing those bullies wouldn't be so confident picking a fight with this world champion these days. You might think that Islam's humble nature might cause him to hold off on throwing massive celebratory events for himself, but when it came to his wedding day, it's pretty clear that he spared absolutely no expense when it came to putting the day together. He booked an entire hotel for himself, reportedly inviting thousands of guests that ranged from his friends and family to his extended MMA circle, which brought in sparring partners, teammates, and managing staff. The whole event was of course in his home of Dagestan. And no, we don't know if Daniel Cormier made an appearance or not. That would make one hell of a travel vlog though. Islam Makhachev is certainly a more mild-mannered and quietly spoken character than his good friend Khabib. But here's a little insight into his personal life that might surprise you. Makhachev appears to enjoy pushing the boundaries of what might be considered safe. Much to Khabib's annoyance, his main hobbies involve riding his motorbike and his love of riding horses. Obviously, these pastimes, and in particular the horse riding, are an invitation for trouble. And Nurmagomedov has made it clear in many interviews that he is not a fan of Islam's need for speed. Unfortunately for him, it doesn't look like Makhachev has any plans to slow down anytime soon. Let's just hope he's as good at high speeds as he is at methodically breaking down his opponents inside the cage. Islam hadn't quite managed to carve out a real reputation for himself when he finally signed for the UFC in 2015. And in some ways, it was a good thing, because in his second fight in the promotion, he came up short in shocking fashion against the Brazilian Adriano Martins, losing by first-round knockout thanks to a whipping left-hand shot. At this stage, Islam and Khabib were still flying under the radar to some extent, so the general public didn't exactly pick up on this early setback. But after taking some time away from the cage, Makhachev made his return nearly a year later and began his current win streak, a run of form that would lead him all the way to the very pinnacle of the sport and the lightweight crown. A lot of people put too much emphasis on keeping the pretty little zero on their record. In many cases, you learn a lot more from a loss than you do from a win. And for Makhachev, the clear improvements to his striking game really showed that. The words "father's plan" are ones often thrown around by Khabib Nurmagomedov when discussing his own rise to the top of the sport, but also how his longtime friend and training partner Islam Makhachev's played into it. The original plan, as it turned out, was for Khabib to rise up, win UFC gold, and eventually vacate the belt in favor of a move up to welterweight. Islam at this point would be fully ready to climb up and take the lightweight title in Khabib's absence. And if the Eagle was in fact successful in earning 170-pound gold, the idea would be to have two Dagestan champions ruling over these two weight classes. Unfortunately, Abdulmanap's untimely death forced Khabib out of the sport prematurely. But even still, both men have managed to hold the lightweight championship of the world, and in our book, that's crazy impressive. Islam Makhachev's ability to avoid damage during his current run in the UFC has truly been unparalleled. Prior to his 5-round war with Alexander Volkanovski, Islam had a strikes absorbed per minute rate of .79, which, compared to the number 2 guy Pete Spratt at 1.04, is totally insane. Even since the Volk fight, Makhachev's rate has dipped to 1.27, which might sound like quite a drop, but it's still the highest of any active fighter in the promotion, and the 5th highest of all time. Considering how Islam generally fights, this stat should come as no surprise. But even still, his numbers are pretty insane to behold. Like Khabib before him, when fighters take on Islam, they tend to freeze up sometimes, unable to really commit to their shots with the same intensity. It was this that made the outcome of Makhachev's bout with Alexander Volkanovski so incredibly shocking. By 2016, Islam was pretty far away from his current status among the sport's pound-for-pound elite. But he did have a spot in the UFC, and with his victory over Chris Wade, he had managed to rebound after a tough first KO loss to Adriano Martins. Despite having spent the last 6 years competing predominantly in MMA, Islam took some time out of his schedule to take part in the World Combat Sambo Championship. And he wasn't just entering for the hell of it. No. He actually won a gold medal in his weight class. Not bad, eh? Some fighters are just built differently, and even after spending his energy on his MMA development, it's clear that Makhachev never lost his touch when it came to Sambo. In the wake of his stunningly dominant performance against Charles Oliveira at UFC 280, it was clear that Islam Makhachev was worth every bit of the hype that had been thrust upon him. But earning UFC gold wasn't the only honor bestowed upon Makhachev in 2022. Shortly after taking the belt home to Dagestan, his people awarded him the Order for Merit to the Republic of Dagestan for his work across the martial arts, which is one of the highest honors that can be given to a native of the Republic. He joins 2 other very famous sporting figures, Abdulmanap and Khabib Nurmagomedov, who were inducted in 2019. As the 3 foremost members of the Dagestan wave that has been spreading across mixed martial arts, these 3 men will be remembered as pioneers for years to come. As for who will follow them, only time will tell. Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to click the bell to be notified of future videos.